Welcome on down to another arcade game review, fellow dazzlers and new players alike. What is going on, everybody? Hey, WrestleJoestar here, taking you on a trip through time as we take a look at Battlezone: Rise of the Black Dogs on Nintendo 64, henceforth known as Battlezone 64, because that's a mouthful. Now, this, before we get to the actual game itself, this video kind of shows something I want to do with this channel, which is taking a look at what happened to our arcade games once they left the arcade. Like, yeah, we can talk about ports and whatnot, but like seeing how developers try to do something different or expand on whatever the original arcade version game was, like with Battlezone 64 and Battlezone 98. And we're taking a look at Battlezone 64 first, because I think it's a good intro into the franchise, as 98 puts you in a commander, first-person commander RTS mode, and 64 is a bit more easier in a sense. Now, what makes this game, Battlezone 64 specifically, a great game you want to play? Well, it's great tank-punching action in space, because there's this whole storyline about how the space race was a lie. It was just a cover-up to use for the Americans and the Soviets to sneak a bunch of like tanks and armies into space, because they discovered a thing called biometal that allows them to do all these tanks that fly around and shoot bullets and bombs and lasers and stuff. Well, not really lasers, but you know what I mean. All these guns and stuff at each other. So you got that aspect. It's supposed to take place during the 1960s, but apparently we're on that Call of Duty Black Ops grind where we see technology way more advanced. I mean, I know there's a biometal, but come on. They still have to get the armies in space. Anyways, the gameplay itself is nice and solid and pretty fun to play with. And it is one of the games that translate decently enough to a modern-day controller. So I've been playing this using a Xbox Series X controller, and it converts over like fine. It almost feels like just like a glove almost. Because I know with GoldenEye, if you use modern-day controllers with that, you end up having your strafe is on your look around is on your left and your strafe's on your right. But for some reason in Battlezone, it just works. I don't know how, it just works. And easy enough to get into, and you also have to reconfigure your controls to play that. But any tank you get into feels responsive, aside from the turn radius, but that just depends on the kind of tank you're driving, right? If you're driving a scout, of course it's going to be quick and zippy and easy to turn around in, but if you're in a big bomber, of course it's going to turn slow. It's a bomber, it's got all these missiles and stuff, and well, enemy tanks and things with. But the other cool thing about Battlezone 64 is it comes with two unique modes that you don't get in 98, and it gets around to why I would say this is a good entry point in the series, because you get the arcade mode, which is just you destroy enemies and move on to the next level once you destroy all enemies in an area. And if you play the American and the Soviet side of things, it starts you off a bit easier, as you'll just take down stationary turrets, and eventually you start taking down enemy tanks. Whereas if you play as the Black Dogs, you start off fighting enemy tanks and fighters like from the offset. So if you're a bit more used to playing Battlezone, that's definitely a mode to play if you want to sharpen your combat skills. You also get the pilot mode. So pilot difficulty basically takes you through the campaign for Battlezone 98 as far as the American and Soviet sides go, without having to worry about all the RTS aspects of that. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention this is a first-person shooter that has RTS elements in it? Yeah, the commander mode actually puts you in command of your base, of your units, of your stuff, and you have to fly around yourself personally. There is no top-down bird's eye view where you highlight all your units, and you send them over, and they go, yes sir, and they all march over to their deaths. You, my friend, have to drive your tank with your units and go over there and blow up the enemies with them. There's no hiding back in base, all safe and secure, and you have to like look at things directly. So if there's a gun turret that's been shredding your units and you got your bombers or your howitzers, you got to look at that gun turret, you got to click on your howitzers and your bombers, and you got to tell them by pointing directly at that gun turret to blow that thing up. You got to command units manually to follow you or to protect units. It's quite ambitious. One, to take Battlezone that was just a basic like boop, 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 you just move around, blow up tanks, move on to the next guy, into this whole RTS FPS. When is the last time you've seen an FPS game that was a real-time strategy game? Alright, like let me know in the comments, because I don't think I've seen games that let you switch perspectives and like take control of a unit temporarily, but not the full-blown RTS aspect. And that's also why it's a bit, I think, good to play the 64 version, because you can experience the whole breadth of the campaign for the Soviets and Americans without having to touch the commander mode. It is interesting to see them try to pull that off on the 64, and I think they do a decent job, but having played through the campaign on the American side for Battlezone 98 myself, it's going to be a bit tricky, because there's enemies that will come in fast and hard, and you got to be quick with deploying your things, and you have to be decisive, and without the ability to save in the middle of a mission outside of using save states, it's going to be difficult, because these missions were not redesigned for the 64, if you see what I mean. They're still just as difficult and tank-busting as the Battlezone 98 is on the PC, so if you are playing this on an emulator, save state away, please. Do not feel ashamed. I will not shame you for that, because I do that too, because, again, these missions are designed like that. Even on pilot mode, you'll be doing things, and it's not uncommon for something to pop up in the middle of the mission and be like, oh no, here's this enemy that's ambushing your transports, or this is happening, or that's happening, and yeah, I get what they're trying to do. You gotta adapt to oncoming, changing things in the battlefield, but just save state, because 98 gives you like several save slots, and I ended up having like 3 or 4 save slots per mission just in case I screwed things up down the line or wanted to jump back to an earlier phase once I became more informed of what was coming down the line. And having those save states on pilot mode definitely will help you benefit you on that as well. What else is cool about this game? Well, the soundtrack is great. It does kind of port over the music from Battlezone 98, but I kind of like the more synthy sounding and MIDI sounding soundtrack for Battlezone 98. Like, listen to this real quick. This is from the first level that you play as for the Americans and Black Dogs. Sounds cool. I like it, and it just fits the mood of the game so well. I mean, the orchestrated kind of stuff on the 98 is not bad, but I kind of just like the synth feeling of the 64 port as well. The other thing that's unique to Battlezone 64 is the Rise of the Black Dogs campaign. While I do believe on the Red Odyssey you get to play as the Black Dogs, you don't get their campaign that you see here. This actually takes place after the American and Soviet campaign, and the Black Dogs basically miss the memo on an important development in the American and Soviet campaign and sends them on a bit of an odyssey, so to speak. And as far as difficulty goes, you want to start off with the Americans first. It really is from left to right. Americans first, Soviets second, Black Dogs third. Black Dogs are the most difficult. For example, in arcade mode, right, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but in arcade mode, right, if you play with the Americans and Soviets, you start off taking out stationary turrets. Simple enough. Black Dogs, you're going to start off taking on Soviet fighters and tanks. Or I think it's fighters at first, or like little basic scout units, and not before long, you're taking out like tanks and more heavier armaments and things like that, and tanks being protected by turrets and things like that. It gets very heated very fast, but it's still a good way to hone your battle skills. With that being said, I think I've jibber-jabbered long enough about this game. If you have a 64, definitely check it out. Acquire the ROM in some fashion. Last I checked, it's about 30 bucks on eBay, and you get a nice little black cartridge as well. So, thank you very much for listening to my jibber-jabbering. Remember, if you want to help support the channel, you not have the financial options available, because we do have our Patreon, our affiliate with TubeBuddy, and our Etsy merch shop as well. Just leaving a rate in the video, sharing it, leaving a comment, that all actually helps out with the channel. If you want more Arcade Madness, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget, Dazzlers, no matter what anybody says, you are a beautiful star. Take care, and good luck in your missions. See you next video for Battlezone 98, or next review rather.